published on our website in due course. No planned fire drills today, but in the event of a fire alarm, please follow the exit signs and congregate in the car park. If anyone present does need assistance in this regard, then please let a member of the Democratic Services team know. If any members do wish to speak, please raise your hand, and the Vice Chair, myself, and the solicitor will note your name, and when it comes to your turn, please use the microphone on the desk in front of you. For members joining the meeting virtually, please raise your hand virtually in the MS Teams, and the Chair will invite you to speak. Please only speak when invited to address the Council, and please do say in advance of making your contribution.
Thank you. Okay, let's move into the agenda proper. Item 1, apologies for absence. Back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Quite a number to go through today. We have apologies from Councillor Adam Boyden, Councillor Shane Collins, Councillor Don Denton, Councillor Andy Dingwall, Councillor Michael Dunk, Councillor Andy Hadley, Councillor Pauline Ham, Councillor Benty Height, Councillor Mike Hewitson, Councillor Andy Kendall, Councillor Marcus Kravis, Councillor Christine Lawrence, Councillor Harry Munt, Councillor Kathy Pearce, Councillor Emily Pearlstone, Councillor Evie Potts-Jones, Councillor Brian Smedley, Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts, Councillor Jenny Snell, Councillor Andy Sorton, Councillor Sarah Wakefield, Councillor Alex Wiltshire, and Councillor Will Wren.
Thank you. Any further? Yes, Bill.
So, apologies, there was a phone went off behind me. It was slightly distracting, Mr. Chairman. Can I also add apologies from Councillor Sarah Dyke, please? Understandably, she has moved on to a new role, and I'm sure we all join in congratulating her. But can I also just add my personal congratulations, but also my respect to both Councillor Faye Purbrick and Councillor Martin Dimery, standing in a parliamentary by-election with national attention. I think takes a huge amount out of you. I applaud them for the dignity with which they conducted their campaigns. Can I also take this opportunity of thanking the returning officer, all the staff, for a perfectly run election. It was a real sight to see the count conducted so efficiently, and all reports from the day were that it took place in remarkable efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Any further apologies that are not on the list that's been read out? Yes.
Councillor Lance Duddridge.
Okay. Right. Okay. If that covers all the apologies, we'll move on to item 2 of the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous full council meeting on the 24th of May. Is it your agreement that I sign them as a true record? Are there any objections to that? No, I take that as read, and I will sign them after the meeting. Thank you. Item 3, which is declarations of interest, and I go over to our legal.
Yes, we've not received any declarations of interest in respect of any matters included on today's agenda, and I can remind members that any interest they may have as members of city, town or parish councils will automatically be recorded in the minutes.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 4, which is public question time. We have 4 people that wish to speak today. Could I remind the speakers that they have up to 3 minutes to make their points? Also outline the fact that all council members have received a copy of the questions put forward, so they don't have to completely go through them, but they have their 3 minutes to do as they require. The first speaker is David Redgewell. Are you online, David, or in the room? I can't see David on the screen. Okay, if I move on to the next speaker, which is Chris Barker, and asked for you to speak, we'll come back to David Redgewell later on.
Thank you.
I'm here with colleagues from West Coker Parish Council to urge you not to spend big money on Chinook Hollow. Why? Because I don't think you have been given a sound basis to make that decision. It all hinges on the statement that you've had from the consultants that there is a substantial risk if the road is just cleared. Now, the principles of risk assessment are straightforward, well established. I've 50 years as a professional engineer, written and read hundreds of reports, and you do them if you organise a village fete or design aircraft. What can go wrong? How bad is the result? How likely is it? Now, the consultants have identified here that the risk is trees or rocks could fall into the hollow, and the effect is fatality or major damage to property. They say that the likelihood of the fall is probable and give a figure of 50 to 70%. There's no time period for that. Now, I can tell you that the probability of me dying is 100%. The probability of me dying in the next year is, I hope, nearer 5%. A number without a timescale is, you can't use it. But even if you had that number, that only tells you the likelihood of debris on the road, not the fatality. For that, you have to do a further assessment that hasn't been done. Now, 1,200 vehicle movements a day is the estimated usage when it was open. That's one every 72 seconds. Some numbers: 10-metre rockfall, 5-metre car, 22 miles an hour. The exposure time is less than 3 seconds, 4%. So if you were to be persuaded that a tree is going to fall every 20 years, that's a fatality every 500. And while you're thinking about that number, bear in mind that as we speak, 1,200 vehicles are taking the long way round, at least an extra 2 miles, 2,400 a day, 1 million a year. That's 130,000 extra litres of petrol and diesel, and more than 300 tonnes of CO2 we could do without. And if you're driving on British rural roads, there's a killed or serious injury every 13 million miles.
You have 30 seconds left.
So while Chinook Hollow is closed, the diversion is bringing a risk of a fatality approximately every 13 years. That's your benchmark that you have to balance against. Now, you might not like my numbers, but you don't have others. You must have a sound audit trail. A risk assessment without numbers is really just a hunch. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Could I ask Mike Rigby to respond, please?
Thank you for your question. Chinook Hollow is a road which links the villages of East Chinook and Odcombe. It has been closed since the 21st of February 2021, following a significant landslide involving 20 tonnes of rock and sand, as well as a large tree. The debris rolled down the side of the 12-metre wall of the hollow, burying part of the road below. Somerset Council employs WSP Limited through the Engineering and Professional Services contract for consultancy support for specific tasks and areas of specific expertise. In this case, expert geotechnical advice. WSP has been contracted to investigate and report on the complex geotechnical and geological issues at Chinook Hollow resulting from the landslip in 2021. WSP carried out a qualitative risk assessment, a QRA, in which the risk of slope instability was assessed based on site observations made during inspections and a desk-based review of the site geology using geological maps and other resources from the British Geological Survey and other publicly available resources. This is an industry standard approach in the assessment of rock slopes and one which WSP has adopted on a considerable number of other projects, including local authorities and national highways. The question to full council appears to advocate a probabilistic risk analysis approach, particularly in the consideration of time and vehicle activity. This requires a number of inputs for which the Chinook Hollow site may include detailed rock slope mapping and comprehensive ground investigation, and back analysis to inform the stability of the rock slopes numerically and to determine its current condition. Given that the information to complete the reports is obtained from limited ground investigation using design assumptions in accordance with general practice, it's concluded that a QRA is an appropriate method of assessing the stability of the rock slopes in Chinook Hollow, based on long-established industry practice the scale and nature of the site, and the information obtainable. And I'd just also like to remind members that this isn't a wildly improbable risk. We had, not a million miles from here, at the Bedminster Tunnel a couple of years ago, an incident where a collapse did occur and 2 people were sadly killed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. If we now move on to Eva Brakowski.
Thank you. If you could let me know when it's 1 minute loudly, I can't hear.
1 minute to go.
And
okay.
then 2, and then
Yep, fine.
half
Okay.
a minute.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, I'm going to talk about male suicide. I'm going to talk about, this is the 3rd time I've spoken about St Andrews, and I'll just go into it. Okay, so I feel as an ex-Catholic that the patron saint of lost causes is my saint, because in July 2021 we spoke, and the first line of my statement was, I realised that Somerset County Council don't directly fund mental health services, but they monitor them. And Councillor Huxtable replied, you do realise, don't you, that we don't, you know, we don't fund mental health services. Now, Heather, has worked hard.
1 minute.
Right. But didn't really refer to the Human Rights Act, suicide prevention, or the Week survey, but, you know, better. The highest rate of suicide is among men, especially under 30. In 2023 now, men still can't express vulnerability, fear, anger, yes, or cry, unless you've just won Wimbledon and then you can cry. But if you work in a meat factory, get bad news, unless your mates all cry, really it's not allowed. I'm glad I'm a woman. So with the cost of living crisis, you know, really bad. I mentioned my father, where my mother stood by him, okay, and my brother, he's been sectioned loads of times, and his wife stood by him, okay, but a lot of people haven't, you know, don't have that. So carrying on, I made a mistake in my statement.
2 minutes.
Thank you. Right, what I mean to say is blood will be on the hands of the ICB if they forcibly remove people from St Andrews, and there's more likelihood if somebody commits suicide. And it'll be your fault and the minions, social workers, that didn't see it coming, right? Not the ICB, probably, in the media. It's tempting to think that the ICB don't give a flying flip about patients, but, you know, they mean well, but, you know, they've got to stop it. So finally, to save face for the ICB, I think a moratorium, a praise sandwich.
2.5.
Okay, activism is my rent and your rent for living on this planet. And you've done really well regarding changing history, regarding, you know, vulnerable people, council tax, etc. Right, I haven't said everything that I want to say, but the closure benefits the ICB and privatisation, not the patients. Rethink bed occupancy, people will go home and visit, they will come back and their bed will be taken. So it's a Somerset-wide thing. They might go to Taunton, Yeovil, or out of the area.
That's your 3 minutes.
Oh, wow, that's quick. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Could I ask Dean Ruddle, please, to reply?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your questions. I'm aware that we have answered these and similar questions from you and others at previous council meetings, and that you have had and received a written response. To conclude the resolution of your questions, we will send you a copy of all previous responses again.
Could I, thank you, Dean. Could I ask you to turn the microphone off on the table, please?
Oh,
thank you. Okay, if we can now move on to Nigel Behan, which I believe is online.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not going to read out all the blurb because it's in front of you. But does the council think that sufficient proposed actions as discussed at scrutiny, climate and place last week, which was the week before, will make any significant reductions in carbon and other greenhouse gases emissions which are measurable, meaningful, and reverse the direction of travel indicated above, which is about, it looks like, not going to meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius increase. Does the council accept more needs to be done in addition to the points noted at scrutiny, climate and place, future transport, climate sustainability, and next steps and green growth? And also, does the council believe there should be no more new fossil fuel licenses for exploration and extraction issued, etc.? You know, I mean, it's one of those things, you know, how long do we kick the can down the road if the road isn't flooded, that is? And you know, also that scientists are saying that we're entering a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene. So, you know, these are significant matters. And I understand the council's predicament and dilemma, but I think campaigning means going ahead rather than going the slowest of the others. So anyway, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we go on this to Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Normally it would be Councillor Sarah Dyke responding on this one. I can inform Council that Councillor Dyke has from Sunday stepped down from the role of lead member for Environment and Climate Change for understandable reasons. While we're in that position, Councillor Dixie Darch, who's the associate lead member, will step into that role. Councillor Darch, are you able to respond? Would you like me to?
I will when you turn your microphone off. Thank you. Yes, very happy to respond. So thank you, Mr. Behan, for your reminder of the alarming pace of global warming and the current evaluation of where we are in terms of limiting global temperature rise. We're fully aware of the gravity of the situation in which we now find ourselves and the need for action. We're also aware of the need to bring our communities with us in implementing those changes and ensure that the most vulnerable are not disadvantaged in this process. If I take questions A and B together, the actions represented in the 19th of July Climate and Place Scrutiny paper are not a comprehensive list of the climate and ecological emergency response required from Somerset Council. Rather, those actions outlined present the timescales and steps needed to identify and reaffirm where Somerset Council should focus our efforts to deliver on our decarbonisation goals set out in the existing climate emergency strategy. The review of the climate emergency strategy includes the development of a climate and ecological action plan, which will identify the key actions needed to achieve our ambitions. These will be specific, measurable and achievable, subject to funding, and will be drafted and presented as soon as practically possible. And coming to your third question about fossil fuels, as a political administration, we are firmly against the principle of extraction of fossil fuels. However, as a planning authority, we do need to be mindful of our duty to consider all planning applications in line with the National Planning Policy Framework and the Somerset Mineral Plan. This is a complex area, and I'm very happy to provide a full answer covering detailed aspects of this following the meeting.
Thank you, Dixie. Okay, I believe now that Mr. Edgwell is now online, so could I pass over to him for his 3 minutes?
Thank you, Chairman. My questions, first of all, is I'm going to start it by saying the government has extended the consultation on the ticket offices, but I think we'd like to know what Somerset Council's view is on the closure of ticket offices, including Taunton across the county, and particularly the ones on South Western Railway, where they wish to remove days of the week when the stations will be shut. So that's my first point, is about advisory board meeting.
Your connection is very poor. You're breaking up.
Hear me now?
Yep, I can. Please continue.
Yeah, just to say that, yeah, on the buses, we had a good meeting on the bus advisory board yesterday, but we still got a lot of work to do with first to recover the position with regards to bus service, particularly on the 2021 service between Weston-super-Mare, Burnham-on-Sea, Highbridge, Bridgewater and Taunton, where some of the punctuality reliability's been falling to pieces. So my question really is about what are we doing with First Group to make sure that recovery plan works for the county. Notice now we now have two bits of First, Wales and West and South running the county services, and I think it might be better if it's all under Wales and the West, based out of Bristol, because Wales Depot is now going to run a lot of the services. Bridgewater's closing, and mine is staying, but there's some doubt now about Yeovil as well. So I just want to know that that is actually work in progress with the county council. And I suppose the final point really is about the interchange at both the Taunton railway station getting shelters, and really pushing really hard to get the planning permission and the regeneration plans, because we desperately need that bus station reopened in Taunton as a hub for both First Group and National Express, Go Ahead, Flixbus and the Hatch and the other operators. We need a base for the bus services in what is a major important regional town. I suppose on the ticket offices, we know what the Western Gateway and Peninsula Transport Boards are doing. I know the north of the county is totally opposed to ticket offices. That just be with the Metro Mayor and with North Somerset Council, and they're totally opposed. So just like to know what Somerset's doing. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mike Rigby.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, David, for your encyclopedic questions today. You will get a full written response, but I'll give you a brief verbal response here today. Like you, I'm extremely concerned that any changes that might impact on the ability of people to have fair and equitable access to rail services and all associated fare products. I've drafted a response to the transport-focused public consultation on these matters, which, as you say, was due to close today. I'm pleased to say that that has been extended until the 1st of September. I mean, the idea that you could run a national consultation on closing every ticket office in England over 3 weeks in the summer, well, the phrase "it's no way to run a railway" has never been more apt, has it? So I'm very pleased that that has been extended. The response that I've drafted for the consultation details these concerns and asks how they intend to address these important issues as they develop and implement changes to their staffing arrangements. And I'll happily share a copy of that with you, Mr. Redgewell, and anyone else that wants to see it. Question 2. The Council set up an enhanced partnership plan and scheme with the bus and rail operators to enable us to discuss changes to bus operations in the county. We're continually working with the operators to understand their commercial situations and to understand how the Council might assist with ensuring that there is sufficient demand for bus services to keep them operating commercially. You will be aware that the Council has access to fairly limited bus recovery funds from government, which are provided in the form of a BSIP Plus grant for the current financial year. The Bus Advisory Board, which is a public meeting, will discuss these matters in detail and ensure transparency about the use of those funds to support services. Question 3. First Group plc have their own recruiting arrangements, and we understand that they are currently actively recruiting for staff. In the meantime, we understand that several drivers have been transferred in from other parts of First Group plc to support the Somerset operation. Local managers continue to provide information on lost mileage on a weekly basis, along with information on the daily situation in relation to staff availability. We are not currently in discussions with the Western Traffic Commissioner in relation to reliability and punctuality, but are in contact with local management over these issues and the need for improvement. And we've seen on a couple of occasions now this year, reliability has fallen below what we would consider to be acceptable levels. In February, we saw the missing miles percentage creep up to 6%, which is way over what we could ever accept. We saw in the last month or so missing miles get up to over 3%. That seems to be back down now to about 1.5%, but it's still too much. We as a council are taking significant measures to get bus usage in the county back up to pre-COVID levels, and reliability is a major part of that. We're not going to get people to try the bus for the first time or to continue using buses if they don't have the confidence that the bus is going to be there when they need it. So we've insisted that First address resilience within their business. You know, we've had this twice this year. It's not acceptable. And if they don't have enough drivers, they don't have enough vehicles to make good when drivers are off sick or when vehicles break down. They need to get those drivers and those vehicles in place so that the public gets the service that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes the public question time. I thank the member of the public to put the questions forward. We move on to item 5, which is Chairman's announcements. I just want to give a little bit of advance warning. I've considered, obviously now we hold meetings starting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but considering meetings like the budget meeting, which we have the beginning of next year, which I think would need more considerable time, It's my intention to recommend that that meeting goes back to starting at 10 o'clock. But I just wanted to give that heads up for councillors, because I know those people that work and other arrangements that have to be made. So especially on the budget meeting, I would be looking to recommend to Democratic Services that we start at 10 rather than 2 in the afternoon. You have the copy of my movements on pages 27, 28. If anyone wishes to put forward any questions on that, I'm more than happy to answer them either now or afterwards. Okay, so that's fine. Oh, John Hunt. Yes, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know it's unusual to ask questions, so I won't be asking a question. Instead, I'd like to just say a personal thank you, and thank you on behalf of many residents, certainly in the Taunton area, on the various events that you've been attending yourself recently. Just to name very few, the Taunton Thespians the other evening, it was lovely to see you there. The Somerset Armed Forces Day at the Vivery Park, which again, you spent a considerable length of time there talking to lots of local residents. And more importantly, the funeral, the very sad funeral of Barnaby Webber, who was the young lad who left us so unnecessarily in the dreadful stabbings that went on in Nottingham. But to see you there in St Mary's Church was, or Taunton Minster, I should say, was terrific. And actually, you followed very well in following the previous excellent chairs that we've had at the council, and you've certainly held up that fine tradition. And again, I'd just like to thank you very much for your support. It really is much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Like I say, I see it as my role as chair to get out as much as possible around the county, also with the vice chair as well. So hopefully I can cover as much that comes in as possible. Okay, if we move on to item 6, which is the report of the executive, street naming and numbering policy. Councillor Bill Revins.
Thank you, Chair. Street naming and numbering is a statutory function of Somerset Council, and we need to formally adopt a policy to give us those powers. There is technical legislation behind this, and in some places contradictory. So we're proposing, for the reasons set out in Annex A, to go with section 17 to 19 of the 1925 Public Health Act. Really important that we have a logical system for street numbering and naming for our partners in the emergency services, for Royal Mail, companies that deliver door to door. And we also need to set out the circumstances under which we might rename or renumber streets and how we engage with communities to do this. I'm pleased to say that City, Town and Parish Councils are already engaging with us on this, and it's important that we recognise our local heritage and our local environment as we do so. I'm assuming that this is going to be uncontentious, but I have more to contribute should it be necessary. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. John Hunt is seconding the recommendation, so I'll give you the opportunity to speak at this time.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't need to speak, I don't think, on this. As Bill quite rightly said, I imagine this would go through without any argument. We certainly need to get on with this. Obviously, it's a statutory function that we must carry out, and certainly those points made out in paper A, showing the wider powers that this gives, it certainly means that I think we should vote for this and go from there. Thank you.
Mark Healy.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's not to be controversial, far from it actually, but as the leaders alluded to on paragraph 2, names chosen will need to be acceptable both to the Somerset Council, the Royal Mail, and primarily to avoid duplication or confusion arising from similar names. I'd like to put forward a case that I hope doesn't happen again between Puriton and Woollavington, between the famous gravity in between called Woollavington Road, where a new site was built in Woollavington on Woollavington Road with the same numbers as in Puriton, 1 to 34, 1 to 34. So we now have mail being delivered to Puriton that should be in Woollavington, Woollavington that should be in Puriton, where emergency services turning up in Puriton, where they should be in Woollavington. So just a brief resume of how things could be misled. So I hope it's not going to happen again. And the Parish Council in Puriton will thank me greatly for this, Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for those words. Bob Filmer.
Thank you, Chair. Again, welcome the report and the comment that the leader made about the parishes, towns and cities having already been engaged with. The only question I wanted to ask, really relating to this, was the process seems to involve them at the end rather than getting them involved right at the beginning in terms of sorting out what these names should be. So can we just be reassured that parishes, towns and cities will be involved at the beginning of the process working out the names rather than just ticking them off at the end?
Yes, I very much hope that that would be the approach that we take, and we're already working with city, town and parish councils on this. It sounds like that's very much the line that we're taking. I've also fully on board take the points that Councillor Healy's raised. I know of other examples where there's confusion that the emergency services have, and it's important that we don't have that confusion at times of great urgency. Thank you.
Yes, David.
Thank you very much. I wasn't going to speak, but I thought I would. As somebody that lives on a road whose road was renamed overnight without any of the residents being consulted, I think this paper really needs to come forward, and we need to abide by it. Also, can we start looking at some of the numbering of the estates in Curry Rival? As I've walked around there, I've got to say the numbering is all over. So we maybe need to do a review around that area as well. But I fully support the paper.
I'm sure. I believe the local member for Curry Rival works for the post office, and will probably echo that.
I can see no more hands. Bill, did you want to say anything further before we move to the vote? Oh, sorry. Oh, is that Richard at the back? Yes.
As the member for Curry Rival, I would tend to agree with you to a degree, but a worst case would be in Hewish Episcopi on Brooklyn Road.
Bill, did you want to say anything before we move to the vote?
I think we could all find worst cases until we find the very worst case, but let's proceed to the vote, please, Chair.
Okay, the recommendations have been put and seconded. Can I have a show of hands, please? All those in favour? Any against? And any abstentions? Are you against, you two holding your hands up? No. Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we move on to item 7, which is reports of the Leader of the Council, Somerset Board arrangements. Back to you, Bill.
Thank you very much, Chair. As we're all aware, it's been a huge year of change for the Health and Wellbeing Board. From October to March, we have had temporary arrangements put in place for the Health and Wellbeing Board and the Integrated Care Partnership to adopt a committees in common approach as plans for the Somerset Board have been developed. And this has allowed both the Council and the Integrated Care Board, also known as NHS Somerset now, to meet the legal requirements to have both the Health and Wellbeing Board and an Integrated Care Partnership in place. Somerset has a single footprint for the Council and NHS Somerset, and it was recognised that the work required of both the Health and Wellbeing Board and the Integrated Care Partnership was very similar, with similar membership, and therefore the committees in common approach was agreed for it to be the best approach for us locally. The Health and Wellbeing Board has met its statutory responsibilities during the last year, including making sure the health and care strategy, a requirement of the Integrated Care Partnership, linked to the Improving Life strategy, the statutory strategy of the Health and Wellbeing Board, agreeing the approach to the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment, completing the Pharmaceutical Needs Assessment, and has had oversight of both the Better Care Fund and SEND monies. The board has also agreed a priority work programme focusing on healthcare and housing, recognising the importance that housing has on people's health and well-being, and a workshop has been held on SEND for board members. The recommendation before Council is to approve the further inclusion of a representative of further education and the Director of Strategy for the Integrated Care Board as members of the Somerset Board, because we believe that they would make an important contribution to that decision making, and we would ask that Council approves the delegation for myself as leader to make future appointments to save us coming back to Council for each one. I would ask for Council's support on this, please.
Thank you. Can I go to Adam Dance, who is seconding the recommendations?
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks very much, Leader. Yeah, I'd just like to echo Bill's comments on this one. I fully support, and if there's any questions, please do come to Bill or I. Thank you.
Yes, David.
So I fully understand how important the Integrated Care Board is and the work that's been done there, bringing that together with the Health and Wellbeing Board. I think it's a fundamental part of how we can provide better health services across the county. We fully support that. Unfortunately, and therefore recommendation 1, I think, is strengthened by those 2 appointments, which we fully support. Recommendation 2 is a funny one, and we're not sure why this is here, because that board only meets 6 times a year, and we meet as regularly. It just seems odd that when it's such an important thing, that we as a council aren't considering it, and therefore we will be abstaining purely on the fact that the delegation of authority doesn't need to happen. It just seems to be an additional recommendation which has been added on, although we do fully support the ICB and we do fully support the recommendation of those 2 people joining the board.
Thank you. Okay, I can't see any further hands. Bill, do you want to say anything further?
Just to say it's not dissimilar to many other delegations that the Leader of Council enjoys, and I will exercise such power should I have it with due consultation with the opposition and all group leaders to make sure that we make the correct decisions in those cases, as we do for all outside bodies. Thank you.
Okay, the recommendation has been put and second. Could I have a show of hands, please? All those in favour? Any against? And those abstentions? Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we move on to item 8, which is report from the Standards Committee. And I pass over to John Bailey.
Thank you, Chair, and afternoon all. Firstly, thank you to all involved in producing the documents that you've got with you. We seek to interpret the Localism Act of 2011, and there's wide consultation gone on through the Cross-Party Standards Committee, through other areas of local government, officers, other authorities and the LGA. We seek to ensure that the process is clear, transparent and inclusive. And the investigations, the 3 documents here.
Could you possibly go nearer to the microphone? They're having an issue too.
Okay. I prefer to stand up. Thank you. I'll just hold the microphone. And our codes cover the city, town and parish councillors. So really I'll abbreviate that by just saying I recommend you to agree the adoption of the 3 documents that are included in there. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Francis Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very happy to second this. It's a very carefully designed and worked through code of conduct, which is suitable for ourselves. And we are, of course, the organisation which has to deal with complaints about parish, town and city councils, which have to have their own codes of conduct. We have been quite keen that they should also follow this one, and we therefore have made arrangements in it to do so. They are, of course, so long as they have a code of conduct, free to follow something else as well. But we do believe that this is good, and I'm very happy to second.
Thank you very much. I can see no hands. So unless, John, you wish to come back, we'll move to the vote.
No, I'm fine, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can I have a show of hands? All those in favour? Anyone against? And any abstentions? Okay, that is carried. Okay, we move on to item 9, which is the report of the monitoring officer minutes from 2 of the legacy district councils. Pass over to the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall that we agreed and approved a number of minutes from the legacy councils at the previous full council meeting in May. This is just hopefully the final wrap up of any outstanding minutes from those councils to approve today. So there are 5 copies of minutes from the Sedgemoor District Council Development Committee, 2 from their executive, 1 from their full council and 1 from Somerset West and Taunton Planning Committee. And if members can just note that one of the executive minutes from Sedgemoor and the full council minutes from Sedgemoor contain some confidential items. So the draft minutes of a meeting are submitted for confirmation of their accuracy. So the minutes are merely a record of what has already taken place at a meeting. So this confirmation of accuracy is not a further opportunity for debate on items recorded in the minutes, nor the reporting of subsequent actions. However, if members do wish to debate or discuss any of the content of the confidential elements of these minutes, then there will be a requirement to go into closed session in order to do so. So the recommendation before you is to approve the accuracy of the minutes as listed, and recommendations B and C will only apply if there is a need to discuss those confidential elements as referenced. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill Slocum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the adjusted amendment, which has already gone to Democratic Services, I would like to approve the appendices 1 to 10 as a true and accurate record, please.
Thank you. Alan Bradford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As the last chairman of Sedgemoor District Council, it gives me great pleasure to second this motion.
Thank you very much. I can't see any hands, so if we can now, oh yes, sorry, David.
Sorry, Chairman. I think to be consistent with our approach at the last meeting, we'll be abstaining on these because those was not at those meetings feel uncomfortable voting and approving a set of minutes that we can't say were accurate. So we will be abstaining, apart from Sedgemoor members who will be voting.
Okay, so could I have a show of hands, all those in favour, please? Anyone against? And covering the abstentions, please. Okay, again, that is carried. We did have a planned break, but seeing we're making good progress, I intend to continue. Item 10, which is the executive report for information from the executive. Bill Revens, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to formally introduce the report, which contains the annual reports from the lead member for resources and performance and the lead member for children, families and education, and to hand over to them if I may.
Okay, it's over to Liz.
Thank you very much, Chair. I hope I don't sound glib if I say to you that I thought I knew a thing or two about working hard until we moved into the year 22-23. And then I had something that I would call an education, because not only did members work hard, officers worked incredibly hard too. And the purpose for me of this report, everything's been published. Every one of these papers that's been approved has been published already. We've considered them at all of our meetings, whether they were full council or executive meetings. But I was particularly keen that a report come to this council and go into the archive of this new council. And of course, that is, of course, the archive of the predecessor councils too. So having said that everything has been referenced, all members, of course, need to understand all of the work that has been completed under the headings of finance and HR. And I'm not forgetting the outside bodies, internal partnerships and external partnerships, because that too was an immense piece of work. And I also would like to make the point that although in local authorities we consider one financial year at a time, at this time of particular pressure and with the move to one new council, it's impossible to look at the year that has passed without considering the year that we are in now and the years that will be coming when we're budget setting again next February. So I just want to, if I may, take a few minutes just to consider some of those pressures that have been on officers and members and the immense workload of local government reorganisation at the same time as financial pressures that we have all felt through the council and in our own personal lives of inflation and increasing interest rates. At the same time, for upper tier councils, of course, the post-COVID pressures on both adults and children's social care are really clear, and they're really clear right through the country. And I would imagine, though I have no knowledge of of obviously local authorities or government in other countries, but I would imagine that those pressures can be seen all over the world. And that, of course, has come at the same time as the end of the COVID grants. So although COVID, as was promised, would have a long tail for social care, the COVID grants have finished. And at the same time, we have been considering the phosphate situation, the need for nutrient neutrality and the effect that that has had on council tax base. And whilst we have been spared from that in the year we're in now, the coming 2 years, whatever happens, the next 2 years will be affected by that. We also, as any of us who were in opposition and sat on scrutiny and attended cabinet meetings, know that the pressures of the new finance system were always recognised as being really relevant and really relevant. And my colleague, Councillor Mike Rigby, and I sat through many meetings when we were considering, from the knowledge that we had, how much of a challenge that would be to go to a new finance system on the same day, not at the same time, on the same day as the new council's vesting day. And that has left us in this year. I know this is separate from the report that I'm presenting on, but that has left us with a hiatus on budget monitoring for a while, which I will be addressing much more fully at the next executive meeting. We're also seeing other upper tier councils across this country, and I've also noticed from Wales too, where those councils are having to draw on reserves to get through the year past, and looking ahead again at the need to draw on reserves. So although the government would like local government to draw more on reserves, somebody needs to tell government that that can only happen once. And if the pressures continue and the reserves are used up, then the local authority services will start to fail across the whole country. If there's huge pressure on local authorities, the NHS will feel the effect, and then our society will definitely feel the effect. So this is a time, Chair, when we all need to work together. I apologise for taking time to discuss what is current when my report is looking backwards, but I hope that all members in this room and those who are listening from home understand the huge relevance of the situation we're in at this moment financially, and also for the pressure on our officers as we continue to go through the restructuring, the transition, transformation and change, TTC, which must not be confused with Taunton Town Council. That's causing me some confusion. But I do acknowledge the immense amount of work that is still continuing. That transformation doesn't drive itself. It is absolutely essential for the health and future of this council, and we continue to devote our time and our support for officers who are working so hard. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Okay. Moving on now to the report from the Children, Families and Education. Can I ask Tessa, please? Sorry. Okay. I didn't see any hands fly up. So
it did fly up. You were looking down at the time, so thank you. So first of all, I've had a good read of the report, and I have to absolutely echo that support for the officers of this authority. I have no doubt that they're bringing 4 accounts and trying to close 5 this year is exceptional, and I'm sure they look forward to next year when it will be 1 set as opposed to 5. But I have to say, this report to me does not cover the position that we've used the future, actually, your words. So the past, the present and the yet to be, that's where we're at, and you've mentioned them today. So last year, close, we have no figures on that already. We're 1/3 of the way through this year, and we've heard reasons why they're not there. If we look at this year in-year reporting, we do not have any figures. We're at month 4, which leaves us with a hiatus, to use your words, of 6 to 7 months. Now, when I look at councils around the country, those that have really struggled, one of the key issues that's picked up across everyone is reporting and challenge. And I have to say that from this side of the room, we have not been able to challenge. And I would think that most councillors in this room are not fully on top of how serious and the pressures are for this council. I'd also point out that not every council in the country will be massively overspent in the year we're talking about, the previous year, and I think it's Wiltshire are looking to come in at within £1 million of their budget, so it's not nationwide. So I would really urge, if I could, to the opposition to say, please, can we have some councillor briefings? I think it's really essential that everybody in this room understands where we are with the budgets. I am absolutely sure there will be some challenging decisions to be made, and I think the more we can understand and know what's going on, I think the better we will be able to help pass that message out to our residents right across Somerset. So I would leave that, please. If you could do that, it would be fantastic. But I think it's essential so we know what's happening moving forwards. Thank you.
Liz, would you like to come back?
Thank you. Thank you. Perfectly understandable and fair questions. Thank you. I just wanted to make some points that we will be looking at the paper for executive on the 2nd of August, having recommendations about member briefings. Our Section 151 officer has been in contact with the CEO of SIPFA to see if he is able to come down in early September and do an all-member briefing. I attended a session that he and others ran at the LGA conference recently with Councillor Tessa Munt at 8:15 in the morning, which is, you know, not kind. But it was an excellent session, and there were interim 151 officers there from Woking and other councils. So I take your point about the range of councils where some are turning in surplus, particularly also districts are not affected in the same way as upper tier authorities. And the other thing that I have asked officers to work on, particularly from a risk statement point of view, is to bring forward a paper that is a risk statement paper, and that will then go through the process of our meetings and end up being part of our budget setting paper, so that we take our budget setting within the context of all the risks. And that work will be, well, that work has already started. So I'll be working on that. I think SIPFA is really important. I completely agree with you about member briefings from our own 151 officer. And I always found those incredibly useful in opposition. To be quite honest, I used to be a bit disappointed that not every member turned up. And I think they should be mandatory, because if you don't get the finance right, you don't get the services right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Mandy?
Thank you. I appreciate that, but I just think that messaging really needs to be loud and clear, because this is a whole organisational approach that's needed. It's not only all the councillors in this room and online, it's all of our staff and officers as well. So it's going to impact everybody. So I think the sooner and clearer the messaging can be, I think the more helpful it will be to the people of Somerset. Thank you.
Mike Rigby.
Thank you, Chair. Many members here today won't be aware of the background to the reporting issue, so let me give you some context. The previous administration decided that they had to replace the enterprise resource planning solution that the council used. It was a system known as SAP, and they decided they had to do that so that it was ready for vesting day. We challenged that, they disagreed. They chose Microsoft Dynamics. Now, I've no problem with MSD, it's as good a system as any, but from the very beginning, we were concerned about the breakneck speed that would be required to have that in place ready for vesting day. And regrettably, despite the warnings from Liz Lation and me, the decision was taken to pursue the switchover, and at least one member of the Conservative cabinet that took that decision admitted publicly that the millions of pounds that were going to be spent on that, they admitted to not having read the papers on which they voted that day. And since being saddled with that decision, when we took over the council, control of the council in 2022, we've worked really hard to get that system in place. We couldn't change the decision, it was set. And I'd like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to the finance team led by Jason Vaughan and the IT team led by Andy Kennell for getting as much work done as they did. And we did get it over the line on vesting day, but without full functionality. That's led to delays in getting payments to suppliers, and that's a cause of real frustration. This council, for some years, has worked hard to make sure that suppliers, particularly local suppliers, are paid on time, particularly in these difficult economic times. That's something that I've heard from suppliers has really been appreciated, and it's caused difficulty in getting those payments to suppliers on time. It's also caused difficulty with getting monitoring reports out of the system. Now, I understand that a piece of software is now part of the system that gets us those reports, but had the previous administration heeded our warnings, there would not have been a delay in providing this information, and I can assure you it's more of a frustration than it is to us than it is to them.
John Cook-Woodman.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've listened to the sort of plan for the future finance, and it seems to be running the reserves down, and Liz Nation's words were until they're no more. But I wondered what level the 151 officer would be happy that reserves were ran down to.
Yes, Liz.
I don't think any 151 officer anywhere in this country or anywhere else would be happy with reserves being run down. Any 151 officer wishes to see all the time reserves gaining, not reducing. So what we need to be working on is lobbying through the county council network, the local government association across party, to make sure that government do understand what it means if councils do call on their reserves in order to get through financial years and project at what that means for the future.
I'm sorry, Chair, I didn't catch a number. That was all.
I don't think anybody can fairly ask a Section 151 officer in a full council meeting to give a number that they would be happy with, because no 151 officer would be happy to see numbers reducing. Of course not.
Sorry, Chair, but surely there is a percentage of total revenue that would be acceptable or not. So you've got no idea what percentage we should be running reserves at.
Liz.
My understanding is for a council of this size, the general fund reserve should be between 30 and 50 million. What we have got happening, and in the medium-term financial strategy paper that was at the previous executive meeting, there were 17 actions. One of those actions is pulling together all the reserves from all of the councils, which can only be finalised when all the statement of accounts are published, and that is being impacted by pressures on external auditors, and so they're running behind in their work. And in that paper you will have seen, you'll see actually the executive for the 2nd of August, you'll see a table that gives the dates on which all of those papers are expected to be published. And then the first job will be to review the reserves, to allocate to the general fund first, to understand where there are earmarked reserves for specific projects like levelling up, like town deals, and then work on the earmarked reserves, and also identify very, very clearly where reserves belong to other organisations, where they're school reserves, where they're AONB, where they're the LEP reserves. All of that work is underway, but we are not able yet to publish any of that work because we don't yet have all the statement of accounts published for all the predecessor councils. So please don't think, Chair, that it means the work is not ongoing. Of course the work is ongoing, but we have to publish in a certain order. And as well as all of those financial and societal pressures that I've referenced, we've also got external auditors struggling to appoint enough people to get through the work of the statement of accounts for all local authorities. This is again something where Somerset is not on its own. Thank you.
David Fothergill.
Oh, Chairman, it was all going so well, wasn't it? We were ahead of schedule, and the comments that Mandy made were as in the same frame as I made at the previous executive, and I've made in other places, which was meant to be helpful. We need to see the figures, and we need to explain to all members what are the issues coming, and it's meant to be helpful. Unfortunately, the bristling on the front table there to make political points. You can just feel it coming, and I'll wait for the next one. But I would just like to respond to Mike Rigby. Mike, I know you were always against that decision, but the decision was taken with the recommendation of officers. The recommendation of officers was, well, you have to take this decision, otherwise you'll not be in a position to be able to operate as we go into the new unitary. That was fully backed up not only by the senior leadership team at the time, the chief executive at the time, everybody that was involved in IT. So that decision was taken for the right reasons. And if Mike Rigby would just like to tell me the person that admitted not reading the papers, I will of course take it up, but that's not a piece of information that I have. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. But Mandy's comments were meant to be helpful because we need to get this through this together. It's
Liz, you want to come back?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make the point that I was in opposition in 2017-18, and so I know how it feels to be on the other side. And I do agree that full information is essential. And in 17-18, that is when the council moved from themed savings to an actual spreadsheet of savings, which made it much easier for everyone to understand and to debate and discuss fairly. So I do take that point on board. Thank you, Chair.
Adam Dance.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I am going to be a bit political as they started. We've carry on. So, but you could have probably guessed that. Okay, well, look, if the previous administration hadn't done massive cuts to prevention, this council wouldn't be in the situation with overspend in adults and children. Well, it's true. The only reason I got involved in politics is because of all of you. So thank you very much. And if the government actually funded public health properly, we are 13.7 million. I'll repeat that as we had something in the other side. We're 13.7 million underfunded for the average in Somerset. So why aren't our MPs in Somerset shouting for Somerset residents? Let's get more money in public health and support our residents from the start. So I ask the opposition, please contact your MPs, and I'll contact my MP and try and get us some more money for public health. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, can we now move to Tessa?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much indeed. You'll find at page 303 of your papers today our annual report, my annual report. I'm very, very pleased to present this, in which we celebrate our children and young people, their resilience in very tough times, and the quality of support and services the staff with whom I work are able to offer them. As you know, we've had 2 inspections in the last year, which recognised our high quality social care services and the improvements made for children with special educational needs and disabilities by the partnership of organisations with whom we work. We're very keen to improve the areas in work identified by the inspectors so that our children and families have an ever improving experience and the rich, full and productive lives they deserve. We have increasing financial pressures, as Liz Lyshon referred to, but a responsibility to respond to an increase of up to 25% in referral to our social care and SEND services. I'd like to acknowledge the creative work that takes place with the NHS, our schools, and the many voluntary sector organisations so that families can find help and support when they need it in a constrained environment. My report highlights the successes. We know there is much to do. There are 4 new strategies, which you'll find the details of within that report. There's the Education for Life strategy, the SEND strategy, Connect Somerset, and Homes and Horizons. You'll also find later on in the papers a new quarterly report, and of course the next one is due rather soon. So I just want to finish by saying that yesterday, during the afternoon and evening, I went to the annual Achievement Awards for children in care, those children in need, those who are leaving care. And it was a fab afternoon and evening, celebrating their massive achievements and their courage and kindness to others. I'm very grateful to other councillors who were present there, who shared that celebration. The speaker said something that I will never forget. He's an author, a broadcaster, and he spent 18 years in care. He said, "I ran away because I wanted to be found." Our job as parents is to find our children and make their lives, as every other child in Somerset, the best that they can ever be. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know whether this report requires any seconding, but if it does, I'm very happy to do so. I unfortunately wasn't able to stay for the speaker last night. Would have wished to do so because absolutely children run away in order to be found. I welcome the fact that there's over 100 pages of this agenda on children. I hope that everybody has read it. I bet they have. I bet some people haven't. This is the most important thing because this is all our future. And so it absolutely is the most important thing. I do recognise and I'm really pleased to see the taking on towards the next stage of a load of the strategies that I had spent 10 years working on. And I want, as Tessa does, it to get better and better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Lee Redmond.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to join the executive member in thanking those members that attended the Children Looked After Annual Achievement Awards yesterday. I love attending them. It fills my heart to see our young people receive awards, the smiles on their faces, to see the carers beaming as their children receive awards. When you consider that a large percentage of children looked after are in our care because of neglect or abuse, these awards really do an amazing thing. A special thank you to the officers who worked very hard to arrange the event. Moving to the reports, I want to thank and quarterly report. I welcome the extensive information contained. It covers a vast number of the areas that impact our young people. I think the reports are helpful, but they may have been written, may be read by some to have been written with rose-coloured glasses. The quarterly report runs till May 2023, does not include an end-of-year budget, and more to the point, does not outline, with one exception that I could find, what we are doing to make things better. Can I ask that, following on from Councillor Nicholson, that if members read one report, to read the engagement and participation report? It outlines the amazing work done by the team to involve young people in what we do. They help shape reports, interview senior staff, advise our direction, and much, much more. Chair, I want to add my concern for not being able to see our budget outturn. Can I ask that future reports are a little more detailed? The quarterly report was excellent and I think it's a really good start, but it just needs a bit more detail there. Can I ask also that it includes what we are doing to correct issues or concerns? So what we can do to make it better? Finally, can I ask the executive member what her priorities are for the next period?
Do you want to come back, Tessa?
Yes, I will. Just need to go through my list. I wanted to present a very positive report because I think there are massive improvements and the team with whom I work have done brilliantly, I think, to turn around in really difficult circumstances. And the circumstances that I would describe as difficult are those, you referred to the finances, the cost of everything is going up so significantly. But equally, we have the demand pressures, the number of people who are coming to us for help. I mentioned 25%, it's pretty much 25% across the board. And I think the team does really very well. We are reorganising and trying to make sure that we're better equipped to face our public and respond more quickly. I suppose if I was looking at my major concerns, they would be sufficiency. There's sufficiency of homes for children in care. And we all know that there's large numbers of organisations who are only really interested in profit, and they are the providers, unfortunately, of care for children and young people. And I think that's pretty desperate. We have a lack of sufficiency locally, and nationally there's a problem. Everybody recognises that, but there doesn't seem to be very much that can be done. We see increases in prices for placements. It goes on and on and on. And that puts pressure on our budget, of course. I have to recognise the work that's been done with the Shaw Trust, who are absolutely fantastic and are doing brilliant work with the Homes and Horizons project. And I think, you know, they are helping us bring home those most complex children who have been living outside of Somerset. And that work will carry on. But we've got to make sure that we can have good quality homes for all of the children in our care, and developing our in-house fostering service is part of that. We've got to focus on that, and we need to develop better relationships really with the independent providers of both residential and foster care. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say, if I may, sorry Chair, I don't want to go on too long, but I wish to answer Lee's questions. The lack of sufficiency of SEND spaces, special places, sorry, for children who need specialist education of some sort or another. A lot of that is social, emotional, mental health requirement now. We're all sitting here twiddling our thumbs, waiting for the school at Ash, which will give us 120 places. That is now going to be 2 years late. They do seem to be whizzing around in the diggers. I've got good reports from some of my colleagues behind me who tell me exactly what's going on site on an almost weekly basis. And I'm very grateful for that. And it does seem that the DFE, the Department for Education, is beginning to address the enormous delay. But there are other problems coming down the line, because they haven't actually, I don't believe they've actually found an academy chain to take that on. So, you know, we just hope. There's also, I think when I last spoke publicly about this, we're expecting there to be a school in Wells, which would have provided 64 places. That was meant to be open in 2027. We now understand that that's 27 to 29. And most of the young people that we're dealing with on a daily basis with their requests and their parents and carers' requests for help may well have got a good deal through their education life. They'll have been through their school life by the time that's open. It's not very helpful. And I just think, you know, we haven't broken ground on that project, so I can't even report. I'll ask my colleague Theo to make sure he keeps a very good close look, as will I, on what's happening in Wales. But we just don't know when we can find sufficiency for the significant number of young people who face extra difficulties. The other thing I would say is at some point we're going to have a long conversation, all of us, I think, to recognise that what has happened during the COVID years, I think there's quite a lot of people who are kind of going, well, in a minute, it's all going to go back to normal. I'm not sure that's the case. I think we probably have to have an acceptance of the fact that the world has changed. So we definitely have a problem with sufficiency. And then I think the last thing I would say, which I have been banging on for some time about, and that is, you know, we are at below national average and have been for years with our school results, our children's results at school, and they're poor at all of the key stages. And it's going to take a really long time to build up a good system of support between us in Somerset Council and the schools. And that includes both our maintained schools, the local authority family of schools, and our academies, because we all have to work together. And we're doing some really quite good work with some of our bigger multi-academy trusts, you'll hear them referred to as MATs, to try and make sure that we can support those schools that need a bit of extra help when things change or things are really tough. So I think in the first year of the Education for Life strategy, we have made good progress in building stronger relationships. There's no question about that, but there is an awful lot more to do. And we developed a 5-year strategy on purpose. It will take years for us to get to where we want to go. But I think we just have to go on, keep going on, and make sure that we implement all of the actions that we possibly can against a financial background that's incredibly challenging and an increasing number of requests for help and support from parents, carers, children and young people. Thank you, Chair.
Brett.
Thank you, Chair. And can I just echo what Francis and Lee have both said about the report? It's great to see so much written about our young people. There's one extra piece that I would really like to see written about, and that's the infrastructure growth plan, which deals with our school place planning. Page 341 of the report refers to the service manager for education places and strategy. And I know up until 2019, we published an infrastructure growth plan for all of our school organisation areas for members to be able to see what was going on in their area in terms of pupil numbers and in terms of pressures from new housing. So I did ask last year. I know that the team were very much tied up during COVID on supporting schools rather than putting those plans out. Sadly, with the move to the new council, you can't even see the 2019 plan online anymore, which has always been a good reference point for me when talking to people. So one ask is, can we have some of those historic documents back online? But particularly to you, Tessa, could we see that infrastructure growth plan coming forward and actually being briefed to all members so we can understand what's happening in our areas, where the pressures are? And when our local schools are asking to expand or asking questions, it will give local members the opportunity to be able to respond and understand, and also support that within the planning process with the new housing that will be coming through, which affects that infrastructure growth plan. So if we could see that either through children's scrutiny or just in a general briefing to members, that would be really great.
Surely I might direct that back to Lee as the chair of scrutiny anyway. You can't look behind you. There's no one there, Lee, it's you. I think I take your point. I hadn't realised that some of the documentation wasn't online. I apologise for that. We'll try and make sure that we can correct that at some point over the summer, I hope. And yes, there are some completing demands in planning. I think not least of which I suspect my colleague Ros would say that she needs some staff. And some senior staff at that. But we'll do our best because we've got, in certain parts of the county, we have a declining birth rate. We have fewer places needed, but more specialist places needed. And there may be unleashed a large number of planning applications as things loosen up in the planning system in one way and another. But we need to take account of that. The one thing I can reassure you is that we now have a comprehensive list of every school in the county, and now we know exactly which councillors are within the catchment areas for those schools. It's not quite as simple as it sounds. Some of the school catchment areas have got 8, 10, 12 councillors in them. So we should be able to share information with you much more quickly, which is my aim. I've no wish to hide anything. And frankly, I feel very strongly that everybody can contribute because everybody knows their own communities best. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Mandy Chilcott.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the report. And as you say, there's much to celebrate here. And I think every piece of work that goes on can help to change children's lives in Somerset. I think the whole ethos is for our children to be aspirational and to do the best that they can. And for me, the big issue overall amongst many really is that key stage 2 outcomes that you mentioned. We're now really, really well below the national average, and it's dropping year on year. Again, my request, I just love to understand that a bit more. Our schools and education for our young people are absolutely key. If we want them to have great aspirations, we need them to be doing well as they can and being the best that they can be. And certainly the key stage 2 at the moment is not a pretty picture in Somerset. So I'd really like to get under the skin of that, Lee, and know and understand a bit more about it and whether there is anything we can do to help our young people on their journeys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mandy. I'm sure there is, and I think probably it's in a lot of cases we need to open the eyes of young people as to what opportunities there are, and there will be increasing opportunities in Somerset for people to do lots of different things. And that's something that we need to work with parents, we need to work with and carers and schools and everybody We all need to work together to raise aspiration. I would say I'm very happy that we should provide you with a briefing, any of you who are interested. What we might do is have one of our teams meetings so that everyone can join in from wherever they are. And I'll ask the team to set that up so that, because we have got very significant problems, very, and they're not brand new. They've been building and building and building, you know, over many years, but we do need to address this and get this sorted out. So very happy to have that briefing, and we'll circulate something to everybody in the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Tessa. As we're taking reports from exec, did you want to say something, David? Sorry. Oh, sorry. I thought you put your hand. Okay. Thank you, David. As we're taking reports from executive members, I'd like to move up item 12, which is the health and wellbeing, and ask Adam to deliver it at this point.
The report is as noted, and if there's any questions, please fire them away. Trudy is here, who might be able to answer any more technical questions, and Bill as chair of the board as well. Thank you.
Okay, referring to item 12, are there any questions regarding the report on the health and wellbeing? Yes.
It's not so much a question, to be honest. I just wanted to speak about it because it's a year since I was appointed to be the opposition lead for public health, and I've learnt loads about this area already. The Director of Public Health, Professor Trudy Grant, told me that early on that success in public health depended on an ability to work with mess. I feel like my little blue book here that I drag out at everything is some of that mess, and this report's tied it really nicely together in a neat package. So I really thank you for it. It's a well-documented summary of the past year, one of enormous change in public health, and it's been met with great teamwork and hard work, and is already proven to be successful. For example, the ICB and Health and Wellbeing Board already operating as committees in common under the banner of the Somerset Board, much earlier than a great deal of other authorities. So I look forward to seeing further success in the next year to meet the aims to improve the health and lives of people in the Somerset. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy.
Ros.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo something, and I don't want it to be regarded as a political statement, but a statement of fact. And that is, we have an ageing population in Somerset. We need to do as much preventative work as possible if we're going to, in the years to come, provide the support needed to our very rapidly ageing population, and one which is way above the national norm. So the plea for additional public health money is not a political comment, it's an actual statement that we do need more money for prevention work. Otherwise, we will not be able to come 2040 and the percentage of people over 65 in the UK is going to be X, and in Somerset it's X plus a significant percentage. And so, you know, as a council, take the politics out of it. We do need to have additional support for public health, full stop.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. If we can go back to item 10, where we give the opportunity of questions to be asked for other members of the executive, starting, any questions for the leader? Yes, Tom.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to, if possible, please ask for an update from the leader on the current situation with the judicial review, which was launched against this council, formerly Somerset County Council, by Chedham Fitzpaine Parish Council, with regard to the creation of Taunton Town Council. That's a lot of councils. And to also ask for the total legal cost that this council has incurred so far.
Thank you, Councillor Deakin, for your question. I can confirm that Chedham Fitzpaine Parish Council's application for judicial review has been dismissed. The court dismissed the claim on merits grounds and on the basis of delay. The court is seeking application for costs, which is currently under consideration, and our costs, I understand, are in the region of £40,000.
Tom, did you want to come back on?
Yeah, thank you very much for that update, leader. So if I was to put together the costs that the parish council themselves have spent and the ones that they've incurred on us, that's over £50,000 of taxpayers' money spent on an endeavour that was never going to get them anywhere, which I think is a real shame and just really unfortunate for the people who live in that area. I think you just confirmed it, Leader, but can I just get you to just explain again what our position is on taking forward, recovering those costs, please?
Bill.
Thank you for your question. I think it's best to say we're giving the matter active consideration at this stage.
Okay, Faye Probert.
Sorry, Bill, I'm not sure if this is you or whether it sits across the whole of your team, but my question really carries on from what I said about documents not being accessible via the internet. We've got a lot of legacy councils. All 5 of them have documents that are now not easily accessible or accessible at all. So just really an ask if we can have a plan to come forward to see how we will be able to access legacy documents in the future across the whole area. I'm presuming there's a strategy for it somewhere.
Yeah, I believe there are plans afoot to make sure that we can bring that forward. There are technical complications with some of the areas. I believe Councillor Lysholm would be able to add a little bit more to my answer, if that's okay.
Can I just quickly come back? It'd be great if maybe there was a contact that we could have if we were looking for an old document, if there was somebody that councillors could put a request into, perhaps.
I assume, yeah, I'm just getting a nod from the Monitoring Officer. Democratic Services have nodded away that they'd be delighted to receive all future requests for documentation you cannot find online, within reason.
Mandy Chilcott.
Thank you very much. Just a question for the leader, really, for some reassurance. We've obviously come together as a new council, and it sort of becomes more and more apparent that all of the districts had different levels of help and support to their towns and parishes. It varied right around the county. So what's sort of coming to pass now is one area you might give support in one way, and I'll pick up one: weed spraying. So it might have been done by one district council in the county and not by another. So, and that's just one example. There are many, many more. So my question is, is there a piece of work ongoing that will look at that service provision as it was previously and look to level it around the county so that all of our towns and parishes will be able to have a sort of level playing field and know what the expectation is? Thank you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right that there was a range of services provided by the different district councils in the past. There has been considerable work around service alignment going on throughout, and that will continue as we move through the process. The next stage, of course, is to get the staffing structure sorted and in place so that we can deliver a consistent level of service across the county, and that's will have our active and ongoing consideration. Yes.
I can't see any further hands. So if I'm, oh, sorry, yes, Sue Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman. It's really a question for the lead member of adult social care. And I was rather disappointed at the very brusque response he gave to Eva Brashiska's question about St Andrews, which, as we all know, we've all heard the presentations. We all know it's a done decision and it's now been implemented. However, she did raise the issue of how patients themselves respond to being treated out of area, and also the impact if relatives can't visit. Now, does that mean that those patients perhaps don't respond quite so well to treatment, which perhaps could mean that when they do come back for reablement in the community, when they're discharged, that they're perhaps coming back needing care, adult social care, for longer and more complex care? Is that being monitored? Because whilst we have no say in this decision, we can monitor the consequences and what those may mean for us as an authority in terms of ensuring that patients get the right quality of care.
Thank you. Okay. If we now, yeah, did you want to come back?
I believe the question was directed at Councillor Ruddle, and you're looking at me.
Yes, I
Councillor
know.
Ruddle.
Magnetism.
I believe the NHS will put in place a service user and carer reference group to support and implement the proposal, and particularly to review how the potential negative impact will increase travel time and mitigation. So I believe there is care going to be put in place for this. I can't answer any more because I wasn't aware of the question you're going to ask me, but I can just fill you in with that.
Well, perhaps if you'd have given the question and perhaps a more fuller response, I might not have felt the need to ask. But this may be one for adult health scrutiny, so sorry, Jill, if I'm dropping you in it. But because of the concerns that are being raised, and there may be lessons to learn for other consolidations that the Integrated Care Board may do going forward, it may be worth having a follow-up report to ensure that unforeseen circumstances are prevented, and if there are issues such as patients taking longer to recover, needing more complex care packages from us when they return home, that perhaps we have a report on how this has actually been managed and how this is going forward in practice, and also any lessons that can be learned from this exercise that may be of benefits not just to us but also the Integrated Care Board as well.
Okay. Seeing we've moved to Councillor Ruddle, are there any other questions for him? No? Okay, so move back up the list. Any questions for Ros Wyke? No, that's good. Are there any questions for the environment and climate, obviously, position? Yes?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, really. Doesn't require much of a response in the sense of a long answer. Really, I just wanted to know if the administration's plans have changed on the amount of trees they wish to plant, given the amount of leaflets that were delivered over the Somerton and Frome by-election. So are you planning on planting more trees to make up for the 17 leaflets in some houses across the constituency? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question, Councillor Payne. I'll refer you to our excellent tree strategy, which I'm sure you've enjoyed reading, and we will review the amount of paper used in recent by-elections. I'm sure it was all environmentally sourced, and many more trees will be planted in celebration of Sarah's outstanding victory. I'm not sure whether that was intended to be a helpful or a political question, David. What do you think? While I've got the floor on the environment, maybe members of the opposition could have a chat with Mr. Gove, who seems to be backtracking on the government's commitment to climate change. Maybe you could have a chat with your campaign team in Uxbridge, who were campaigning against emission zones with their public health benefits as well as their environmental benefits. Maybe you could have a chat with Rebecca Power, who's announced that the packaging reforms are going to be delayed for another year. I can be helpful too.
Yes, John Woodman.
Yeah, just an observation, Chairman. That's all. It seems to be the answer to every question is we need more money from the government. Is there going to be another answer today?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that was in my answers. Has been in any of my answers at all. Is that correct or not correct?
I thought you were looking for Gove to add something to that.
No, Mr. Gove announced on Sunday in the Sunday papers that I'll just see whether I can check the reference for you if you would like. I believe it was that climate change should no longer be a religious crusade. And being someone who's very interested in the ecological theology, I would take issue with that both on a theological and an ecological perspective.
Faye Purbrick.
Easy for you to say.
Thank you, Chair. While we're talking about what's been going on for the last month, I'd just like to ask for reassurance from all of the executive members that we'll be taking full advantage of the permitted development that is coming forward from Grant Shapps government to allow for more than 1 gigawatt of solar panels to be put on our roofs, so we can make sure that our new schools, the buildings that I'm sure you'll be decarbonising with some of the government funding that we've had in the past, take full advantage of that ability as soon as permitted development is available. Thank you.
Lee Redman.
Just a question for Councillor
Sorry,
Rigby.
yeah, go on.
Just a question for Councillor Rigby, if possible, if we can leave our toys outside and move on to the next item.
Can we just go back to, you wanted an answer to answer the
I
last?
was going to respond to Faith's question, and I think it is a broader question versus just talking about having solar panels on roof. We've got land ready to go for solar panels in Somerset, additional ones on county land, and we cannot do so because we cannot get a grid connection. And not only that, but the grid connection date is 2035. And the southwest of England has got the longest delay in getting grid connections anywhere in the country. And this is having a serious impact on not just our particular solar farm, but actually right across the economy in Somerset. And so, you know, while I'm delighted to see more solar panels in the various locations in Somerset, the substantial issue is about grid connections. And if we were asking earlier if you can talk to your MPs about some grid connections, I'd be really delighted if you can say that in the southwest we do have grid connection issues, and we would love not to be bottom of the list.
Faye.
Yeah, absolutely. It was something that I was talking about at the same time on grid connections. But one of the great things about permitted development on roofs is that you can actually get it into those buildings, into our schools, as we are seeing with our passive house school. So while there may be struggles with grid connection, and I will absolutely be making those arguments and have been making those arguments for years, if we can look at the solutions that are available to us and with permitted development, getting that energy into our schools, into our buildings, then that will help both with costs and with the environmental impact. And I'll be happy to support you in any conversations that you want to be having to push us up the agenda.
Thank you. And if you could help with getting funding from central government, because you know there is quite a lot of funding, and I will make that point.
Okay, if we can move on to our favourite, that usually it's questions from Mike Rigby, and can I go back to Lee Redmond?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Rigby, I wanted to make reference to the recent announcement from First Bus about their changes to their service, and particularly a closure to the Bridgewater depot. I wanted to firstly clarify some confusion that has been made in some of the press. It's been reported that the bus station in Bridgewater would close. My understanding is that is incorrect, and it is the bus depot where the buses start their journeys from. My question is in relation to, for Councillor Rigby, can you please look into the proposed changes and come back to me with any updates in relation to whether the service will be detrimentally impacted and what you may have done to help support it?
Yes, Mike.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Redmond. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the bus depot in Bridgewater that is scheduled to be closed, not the bus station, thankfully. In terms of the changes that are being proposed by First, as you're aware, those are changes that it's open to them to make on notice to the Traffic Commissioner, and we, where we can, step in to fill in the worst of the gaps. What I can say, and there's more information about this coming out soon, is that the changes would have been far more significant had we not had a conversation with First to find a way through some of the worst of the changes that they had been considering. That's now gone away, thankfully, at least for a period of time, and I'll say more about that as it becomes available in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, more than happy to come back to you, Councillor Redmond, with additional information about the changes that have been proposed and what the effects of those might be and what else we might be able to do.
John Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. Mike, just rather than pick one individual thing, this is something that does affect probably, I don't know, 200,000 people in Somerset, which is the Taunton Park and Ride service. Obviously, outlying areas, most come in and use that service. We have got a situation now, as I'm sure one would hope you're aware of anyway, is the changing in contractor from First Bus to whoever that happens to be. I would just like to ask that on behalf of all those that use the service and many more, that we make this as smooth and seamless as possible, the transition to whomever that the new service provider will be. I gather it will commence around November time, early November time, with the new person. From what I can see, that the service seems to be running very well. It's certainly more popular than it was before, certainly with the new bus fare scheme that we've got. And it would be a shame now if this does, for some reason, there's a blip here in the service that would obviously put people off using the thing. At the moment, we're starting to get people using the buses more and more, which I congratulate you for, but we really do need to keep on this. So can I please ask that you and your team really keep the pressure on and don't miss a beat really, and keep this as seamless as possible for our residents. Thank you.
Okay, and the next, Ross Henley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to add to the comments by Councillor Hunt. The other park and ride is in my division and Councillor Wakefield's division. And really pleased been involved by Mike and the officers, John Perrott, regarding the potential change of contract, and takes you back to the time when, if Somerset West and Taunton hadn't rescued the park and ride services with financial funding, whether they'd still be open now. So I'm really pleased that took place. What I really want to talk about, the question I want to ask, is in my role as a neurodiversity champion. And so regarding the ticket office closures, I know David Ridgewell talked about it. I want to take a slightly different angle. I travel a lot by train now, and as face-to-face courses are recommencing, as I'm a mental health trainer, run mental health courses, travel a lot regularly by train. And this week, in fact, I've been traveling by train to Plymouth, and I observe a regular flow of people using the ticket offices, not just to buy tickets, but also to get passenger information as well. Now, 10% of people buy tickets from the ticket offices and not from other sources. Lots of vulnerable people even do not use the online services or the ticket machines, or because they can't do, or they find online services and buying tickets online a challenge. They'll still find ticket machines a challenge as well. Now, I know that the proposals talk about bringing the staff out of ticket offices. Our local MP has sort of alluded to that. Is that really going to happen? Is it going to work? And it's not just Taunton. I'm talking about all of the other stations across Somerset. Some of them are quite small, some are big. I spent 2 hours a couple of weeks ago, 1 hour on a Tuesday, 1 hour on a Thursday, waiting for a train at Castle Carey on the very far platforms, over a very steep footbridge there. Would they really have roving staff there? I'm not sure. It'd be really difficult. I'm training a person one-to-one who's blind at the moment. He said he travels by train. He'll find it almost impossible to continue to travel by train now if these proposals are accepted. And I just wanted to finish by asking Councillor Rigby, when you send in your response, will you also raise the issue in terms of the detrimental effect this potentially have for our local residents with disabilities or neurodiversity? And I wanted to end with this statement from the consultation, which said, these proposals form part of wider plans to modernise the railway and bring it more into line with modern consumer expectations. That is an incredibly arrogant statement from the formal consultation document. It is completely ignoring the rights, and it is discriminating against the 10% of people who cannot use online services or find that extremely challenging.
Mike.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Henley, for your points and your question there. What I can tell you is that there has apparently been an equalities impact assessment made of these changes, these proposed changes, but no one's seen it. So we couldn't, in our consultation response, include our assessment of the assessment, if you like. We don't know to what extent equalities has been factored into the proposal. What we're very pleased about, obviously, is that the consultation, rather than it being 3 weeks, is now being extended for another 5 weeks. So I think that makes it about 8 in total anyway. So the 1st of September, we now have to get our consultation responses in, and anyone concerned about that, including all of us here, I'd invite you to Google that and to give the consultation your response. What I hope we will now have is the opportunity to see that impact assessment before the end of the consultation period, and that will generate from us as a council a further consultation response once we've seen it and once we see whether or not those things have been taken into account. But certainly on the bones of the proposal as it's been put forward, it doesn't look to us in any way that the issues that you've raised have been properly taken into account, and that has formed part of our consultation response to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Jill? Jill Slocum.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Hang on.
Sorry, Chair, I was just Councillor Hunt was just asking if he could have a response to the park and ride question, which I haven't done yet. Is that okay, Chair? Shall I do that now?
Please do.
Okay. Yeah, we obviously intend that the process be as seamless as possible. It's disappointing that the contract is ending earlier than we'd expected, but we are confident that we'll find an alternative provider and that will be implemented without there being any impact on the service. As you're aware, Councillor Hunt, we've worked hard to make sure that bus use in Taunton is increasing, and it has done. The measures that have been put in place, including the BSIP plan, including the £1 fare offer throughout the Greater Taunton area, has meant that we've seen a 25% increase in bus use since before that started. The Bus It campaign that we've put forward, the first bit of marketing on buses for years, as far as we can see in the area, that campaign Somerset-wide has led to has contributed to a 14% increase in bus use across the whole county. That campaign is up for a national award, I'm pleased to say. But yeah, absolutely, we'll work really hard to make sure that no one notices the difference, or certainly not in a negative way anyway. Thank you.
Right, now Jill.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I just wanted Councillor Rigby not to forget me. Remember? So I just, yes, thank you, because I worry that he might forget who I am. But on a more serious note, I want to ask that could we make sure that, following on from Councillor Redmond's about the Bridgewater station, can we make sure the press has the correct information? It's caused a lot of angst between the depot and the station. And what we really want you to hear, not to be parochial, please forgive me, but what we really want to hear from you is that the station is being extended because of the many buses now that are going to be going through 24 hours. So that's what I really want to hear. I'll just leave you with that little one, but just don't forget me. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want to go back on that, Mike, or you?
I shall never forget Councillor Slocum.
Diego.
Thank you, Chair. I think thank you to Councillor Redmond for raising the Bridgewater Bus Depot issue. As well as that, though, residents are concerned about the news of potential reduction to Bridgewater bus services come September. The people I speak to are also aware of the millions of pounds that government's awarded to Somerset Council towards bus services in Somerset, some of which have gone towards, as already mentioned, the £1 fares in Taunton, evening services to and from Taunton, and investment into Taunton bus station. So the residents that I've spoken to about this really want reassurance, and they're asking whether or not this council will be taking any action to prevent the potential reduction in bus services in Bridgewater come September.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Rodriguez, for your questions. Certainly we'll continue to work with the bus company to examine the impact of any reductions in the Bridgewater area. Anything like that is obviously regrettable, but we operate under a system, have done since 1986, where the profitable routes have to be run by the private sector, and we pick up the pieces where they can't run a service any longer. But we'll see what we can do. The amount of money that we have to support reducing services is fairly limited. It's come through this year in the form of that BSIP plus grant. It is limited, but we'll certainly see what we can do to step in where the private sector has not been able to provide a commercial service. Absolutely right on the BSIP funding. We're really pleased with that, although obviously it was less than 10% of what this council or the previous council, Somerset County Council, had bid for. Had we had that, then obviously the sorts of measures we've undertaken in Taunton, for example, would have been capable of being spread more widely. But the process, as I think, as I've explained before, is the hope is that what we do is put that money into an area and make a transformational change, so that it means that the bus companies in particular can see that where bus fares are set at a reasonable rate, where many people can afford them, they actually end up with more passengers, and it's better from a commercial point of view. So at the end of the 3-year funding process, we hope that that will have made that transformational change in the Greater Taunton area, and it will then be attractive to bus companies to replicate that using their own funds elsewhere. Thank you.
Chair, could I ask just another quick one, if that's all right?
Yes, it's very quick,
thank
please.
You. Just my second question I had was around the transport and placemaking policy principles document that went to the exec earlier this month. What I'd like to know is that sections of the document does refer to new parking policy decisions and parking rules. Now, as Councillor Tom Deacon, I think rightly pointed out previously, is that I do sleep with the Lib Dem manifesto on my bedside. And I noticed that within that manifesto, one of the commitments does say to allow local community networks to set car parking rules to best serve the needs of their communities. So can the lead member therefore confirm that all LCNs will have a meaningful vote on the parking policies and rules set out within that transport and placemaking document before the document is implemented, or have they chosen not to deliver on that particular manifesto commitment?
Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, LCNs have clearly a very important place in the process of creating policy, and we're keen that they do that. So I'd have no particular issue with LCNs having a vote on the policies that we put forward. As you're aware, we had a vote here in this room earlier this year on what the rise in parking fees would be this year. That's a decision ultimately that gets taken by this council, but I'm more than happy that LCNs have a vote on what they think should be happening locally. What we do need to be careful of is to make sure that everyone has the correct information. You know, many local areas think that it would be a really great idea if parking was free. I can tell you it would not, because the car parks would be full from day to day with people's camper vans and long-term parking, as we saw in parts of the county when we suspended parking fees during the COVID period. It was the right thing to do then, but we have to be quite careful to make sure that everyone has the right information and they're making their decisions based on the information that will ultimately do a number of things. Parking has the opportunity to increase business in our towns and our commercial centres where there's a decent turnover of parking, and it also raises important funding for local authorities, from all the way up from parish and town councils up to county councils and unitary councils, to make sure that they have the funding capable of supporting their transport goals. Thank you.
Okay, I've
But
got.
Chair, just for clarity, because I didn't get the one answer I was looking for. Just whether or not those LCNs will get to vote on the
I think he's
transport
given
and
you an
placemaking
answer
document.
that he wants to give. All right. 6 more hands up. I'm not going to take any more because I think we need to move on. They are Mark Healy, David Fothergill, Hugh Davis, Henry Hobhouse, Tony Locke and Rosemary Wood. So if you can start off, Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, back to Bridgewater bus station, if I may. Not a complaint, far from it, Councillor Rigby, but to choose your words, and Councillor Redmond, you said you'd get back to him. I shall choose your words again, where you said the unforgettable, Councillor Slocum as well. It goes on, it's more than Bridgewater Town Council, of course, Chairman, through you. It affects every local council, so I would like, if it's okay with you, Councillor Rigby, would you inform every local councillor, because it affects us all, rather than just 2 people? Thank you.
Happy to, Chair.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. David Fothergill.
Thank you. 2 very quick ones. If there's a letter being written on behalf of the council relating to the consultation on ticket offices, could we see it, please? Could all members see it? That's the request. Second one is picking up a point from David Redwell, which I don't think was answered, but he specifically referred to the Taunton bus station, which was closed by the Somerset West and Taunton Council a few years ago. My question actually is a lot simpler than that. So I understand that a 3-year agreement has been signed for it to be used as a vaccination centre. Does that mean that bus station cannot be brought back into operation for at least another 3 years?
Mike?
Thank you once again for the heart of understanding. The bus company that ran the bus station closed the bus station. I think everyone here knows that, and it's disingenuous to say anything other than that. The bus station was, as you know, half owned by the bus company, half by Somerset West and Taunton Council. Somerset West and Taunton Council wisely bought the half of it that it didn't open, securing the future of that site for whatever use. We've taken the decision as a council that we will be putting a bus station as part of a mobility hub back on that site. The plans for that will be shared later this year. I'm expecting that will be implemented next year. And so where you say that there's an agreement for them to use it, there isn't. What there is a 3-year planning permission. So they had to apply for planning permission to continue that use. They got a 3-year permission, but it doesn't mean that they will be on site for 3 years, because they won't.
Thank you. Hugh Davis.
Thank you, Chair. This is to you, Mike. With all the challenges that you're getting via the Bridgewater town business, I'm surprised you haven't told the council hear about the good news that I sent you regarding EDF. Would you like to follow on with that?
Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Can you remind me what the good news was, please? There's not normally much with EDF, but there we go.
I knew you'd walk into that one, excuse me, sorry. It's regarding EDF free bus that we have between Bridgewater and Minehead. And over the years, it's been quite successful, well used. But now we're very lucky that they've now decided to increase the time allowance for people getting to Bridgewater or into Minehead at 2.5 hour stay. And that is starting on the 7th of August of next month. So that is all free, ladies and gentlemen, by EDF. And that takes you all the way to Bridgewater, going to all the villages which haven't got a bus service. We're complaining about Taunton, etc. There's lots of places in our Somerset that haven't got bus service at all. And EDF have been fantastic in doing this for us. Thank you.
Okay.
Of course, that amazing news. I don't know how I forgot that, but what I will do is to undertake to celebrate this fabulous news by joining Councillor Davis on a bus journey somewhere of his choosing on that service.
And Henry Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Rigby, for visiting Castle Carey Station, and you as well, Ross. We have got a new disabled footbridge being installed at the expense of the Newt Hotel and the Pilton Pop Festival, to show you my age. What really concerns me is until that new disabled footbridge is erected in probably 3 to 5 years, we require station staff to push disabled people across the lines to get to both platform 1 and platform 2. Can you reassure me that if they decide to remove the ticket offices, or are we going to complain loudly enough to stop them doing that so we leave Castle Carey Station manned?
Mike?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hobhouse. Yeah, thank you for showing me around the railway station. It is a major concern. It's one of the issues that we are concerned about with the loss of the ticket offices and the staff potentially. I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb here and say that the ticket office closures won't happen. When I looked at the numbers last week, there were 100,000 consultation responses. Yesterday, it was up to 170,000. We've now got another 5 weeks to respond. It wouldn't shock me if we ended up at over 500,000 by the time this is done. I think the proposal has touched a nerve that I'm not convinced the Rail Delivery Group or the DfT were expecting. So I think there'll be some serious changes to the proposal that is in front of us. However, if they do go ahead and ignore the huge consultation response and do close England's ticket offices, there will be exceptional circumstances like those experienced in Castle Carey, where they will need to make alternative provision, because otherwise you just cut off fairly large parts of the network from accessibility by various minority groups, and we can't have that. And I don't think anyone would accept that as a result of this process. So, as I say, I'm pretty hopeful we won't get to that point, but if we do, there'll have to be special measures taken at stations like Castle Carey.
Tony Locke.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't usually participate in this part of the meeting, but I feel I have to today because of the number of phone calls I have, and I'm sure Councillor Rigby knows what I'm going to say now. Well, I support No Mow May. We are now in June and July, coming into August, and we have had no mow. Now, I don't know whether any of you have been to Yeovil, but some of the areas around Yeovil are about 2-3 foot high with grass. Now, these were previously cut by district council operatives. Now, they are highway land, and whether they was cut on contract, but they're not being cut now. And while we try and encourage our residents to look after their areas and try to keep them looking respectable. Some of these verges in areas, especially when they're right outside the crematorium and you've got grass 3 foot high, I think is pretty disgusting. And I'm afraid to have to say it. I appreciate we've gone through vesting day and there's a lot of changes being made and probably things are being sorted out with the particular operatives of the parks and green spaces and what have you. But something really needs looking at this because it's also a health hazard. You get people walk their dogs on the verges. They cannot pick up their detritus from their animals or anything because the grass is so long, because they can't find it half the time. And then when they come to cut it, they usually leave it lying down there for it to blow around or strim it around, and it flies everywhere. But it is something which needs to be looked at urgently. And as I say, just take a trip to the Oval. Many of the roads and the junctions, roundabouts, entrance and exits to the town. And I will leave that in, I believe it falls within the highways officers and councillors sort of remit. But if it falls within the environmental one, we need to look at our issues with the environmental issues we are trying to achieve. Thank you, Chairman.
Mike.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the question, Councillor Locke. As ever with any local issues like this, please make sure that you bring them to the attention of the Area Highways Office. And if you struggle to get a response that you're happy with, then do let me know. But make sure that they are aware in the first instance, because they've got a bigger hedge trimmer than I have. Thank you.
Okay, the final questioner is Rosemary Wood.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank my fellow councillor for saying half of what I'd like to have said about the EDF bus, because EDF are helping us no end in providing that bus, because no other buses go between Watchet and Bridgewater. It is only the EDF bus, and that is something we lack. We lack those big buses. Well, the EDF buses have got bigger, but their routes haven't changed. Well, thank you, my colleague there. We do talk to each other occasionally, only occasionally. Now, what I want to say as well, don't forget the outlying areas. Taunton to Minehead has a bus, the 28. It's very efficient when it runs. It doesn't always run. I make that point.
A final comment from yourself, Mr. Rigby.
I'm aware of the reliability issues. I had an issue with the 28 bus myself yesterday when not everyone could get on the thing. It was so full. So I'm pleased that there are signs of recovery on some of the services, but as ever, there is an issue with reliability. The bus company is aware of that, and we continue to bang the drum to make sure that those services are there when people expect them to be there. We'll never get the usage back up to where we want it to be if the buses aren't there when people expect them to be there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have two names on the list that we haven't asked if there's any questions. The first one is Theo Butts-Phillips on transformation and HR. No. And the other one is Frederica Smith-Roberts on communities. Yes. I believe the leader will answer this as Fed is not here.
I've got two here, quick ones. Firstly, I'm quite jealous of Taunton and the amount of events the town council has on. I'm just wondering whether we can expect to see Somerset Council committing to investing in events around the county, Chard, Yeovil, Bridgewater, Frome, Minehead, Wellington, wherever it may be. But I see the Somerset Council logo on all Taunton Town Council events, and I think it'd be quite nice if we could start to have the same across the county.
Thank you. As you'll be aware, it's not my portfolio area, but my understanding is we are honouring previous commitments of Somerset West and Taunton Council where those events are happening, as with the coronation, for example. All town councils will be treated the same going forward, so there is a particular legacy issue of having a new Taunton Town Council from the 1st of April.
I can add a little bit to that as well. We are working to try and spread this across the whole of Somerset. But at the moment, we've got a sort of learning phase that we're going through. But we will be spreading events across Somerset rather than just Taunton. But a lot of this, as the leader has said, is tied in with a joint ownership of the event.
Yeah, I'd just like to add a bit to that too, because South Somerset area, as you'll see, you have quite a lot of play days through this year, and other parts of the county don't, and that's due to the fact that South Somerset District Council delivered them, and going forward, that next year they'll all be treated the same. So just to add a bit more, that actually Taunton are having some symptoms, but we're quite fortunate in South Somerset. We've got lots of play days, which other people haven't got. So I think it's just the makeup of the unitary going forward this first year, really.
Sorry, I cut you off. Did you want to come back?
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. My second question is more of a specific one. It really relates to LCNs. I don't know how many councillors have already had their first LCN meeting, but I haven't had mine in Chard and Blackdowns. My LCN was postponed on the basis that 2 out of the 6 county Somerset councillors couldn't attend. Obviously, the core, as terms of reference, is 30% of the core membership. No reason was really given other than two of the councillors couldn't attend. Me and my colleague Martin Well in Chard were quite concerned by this. Is there an actual reason that LCM meeting was postponed?
I have no knowledge of that. I'm just looking around whether Councillor Butt-Philip was able
I think Val Keach has got her hand up.
Or Val Keach was able to answer. Sorry, just looking around the room for colleagues that can pick this up. Thank you.
Very happy to answer that. It wasn't just 2 councillors, if I can answer Councillor Payne. There were at least 3 councillors, possibly 4, who were going to be unable to attend. So we made the decision to change it. The rearranged date is next week, and you should have received an email invitation in your inbox.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, we've now gone through the list of the executive. We've just now passed, well, we've gone through the 2-hour mark. What I'm going to have is a very short recess. I have to declare a personal interest in that. If we can have 5 minutes, please. Okay, I think everybody is back in their places. Okay, if we can resume at item 11, which is the annual report of the Audit Committee. As Mike Hewitson is not with us today, can I pass over to Andy Sully, please, to put the report?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to propose to take the report as printed for the Audit Committee and take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions for the audit? No. Okay, good. That puts that one in. Item 13, which is the annual report of the Scrutiny Committee, Adults and Health. Jill Slocum.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You all have the report, but I'm just going to, you'd think it was wrong if I wasn't going to take the opportunity just to slightly expand on my report, just to see if you noticed any anomalies with it. You can see for yourself that the committee has agreed the work programme, also giving flexibility to major issues. We've set the expectations out and welcome members' contributions, really welcome that. The budget, we have the budget for 2023-24, which is 186.6 million. And as we all know, there's an overspend of just over 15.4 million. So we'll be monitoring this really very carefully. The committee have had presentation on the draft strategy of the Integrated Care Board, which to be established under the Health and Care Act 22. The strategy will build on the existing work developed under the Fit for My Future, which will need to tackle many challenges very relevant to us all. Most importantly, obviously, reducing the disparities in health and social care, improving the quality and performance, but of course there are many, many more things that we're going to look at. There are 5 strategic aims which we'll be scrutinising, ensuring these are adhered to, which are detailed in the report. We had a very detailed report in the Somerset West Ambulance Service, which I know many people have asked me about the public confidence and recruitment and the response times. And we've asked the ambulance people to come back to us, especially if there's no significant improvement. So we look for that. We'll be reviewing the outcomes of the stroke consultation, and I will be feeding that back to the council. We've looked at the workforce planning with the discussions over 1.65 million jobs. The committee were given an update on the successes of the Proud to Care initiatives and future plan. We've agreed to support the recommendations to the executive, the aims and objectives of the next phase of the transformation programme for adult services. There was a presentation which brought out cricket theme, which was amazing, about cardiovascular disease and its prevention. And I would say to any members, if they've not looked at that, please have a look. It's really, really interesting. And like me, I didn't know nothing about cricket, and now I do. I would also like to take the opportunity, just to remember, we had a mental health workshop last week. Unfortunately, not many members could get there, but it was really, really good. And I'd like to thank the portfolio holder, Councillor Ruddle, for attending, which was really important to us. And it was a very, very interesting meeting. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the officers for their support, help and guidance, and thank all the committee members for their contributions, which are so valid. So thank you all very much, and we look forward to moving on and scrutinising much more. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Dean Ruddle.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the committee for all their hard work and the officers that do such a hard, they work really hard to give all the right information to the committee. So thank you very much, Jill, and your committee. Well done. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Jill? If not, we will move on to item 14, which is Scrutiny Committee, Children's and Family, Lee Redman.
Firstly, thank you to you members that stayed for the last little bit. You all get a brownie point. Thank you. First of all, it's important to thank officers for their work in helping with the committee. I need to thank my previous Vice Chair, Councillor Patrick, and wish him luck with his future tasks within the council, that is, rather than future. Of course, to thank my new Vice Chair and wish her well. If I'm not in communication because I know she's poorly at the moment, but if any of you, the members across the other side, are in contact with her, please send my regards to her. And I look forward to having her back and helping us move forward. Our work is extensive. As always, we would welcome topics, and I often put the shout out, members and officers are our eyes and ears when it comes to topics. We can't be everywhere and everything. So ideas or topics or things that we need to look into, please feel free to bring them forward. We have requested an increase in meetings, and I think this is taking place. The agenda we have is massive, and we're working our way through the extensive list of topics. A little bit of a heads up for members. Listening to to members' comments about the size of the county and things. I understand that scrutiny is on the move. We've been moving around the county at different venues. And that's not just my scrutiny committee, I believe other committees do, but a little bit of heads up. So our September meeting will be in Bridgewater, our October meeting will be in Yeovil, and our November meeting will be in Taunton. So that's something a little bit interesting. And just in relation to that, I am impressed with the fact that we're able to take our meetings both in a hybrid format around the county. There's a lot of work gone in from a lot of officers to make that happen, and I appreciate their time for that. The report is in front of you. Hopefully you've all worked your way through it. As always, any questions welcomed. Thank you, Chair.
Jessamine.
I hope I'm not preempting anybody who wanted to ask any questions, but I would like to just thank Lee very, very much indeed for his hard work and the work that he does with me as lead member. I'm very grateful to him because I think it's quite incisive, the work that he does, and that's really brilliant. I'm also very glad to see that we're on the move because I think it's really important that we get around the county and don't just get trapped in Taunton. Thank you very much indeed, Lee, to you and to your committee for everything that you do.
Any questions for Lee? If not, that concludes today's business. Just remains for me to thank you all for coming and a very safe journey home. Thank you.